Hey guys, it's Julie Spencer, author juliespencer.com. I just wanted to come onto my channel and talk a little bit about one of the books that I have written that I don't talk about very much in like my newsletters and on social media and stuff. So this is called $1 Million Bucks. I don't share it very often because it's very different from what I normally write. It has a polyamorous relationship in it, which you would think that that wouldn't necessarily be in clean romance, which is what I normally write. But it is handled very tastefully in the book. And it's a very important story. I've been told this could save somebody's life based on the way that the acceptance of the one person in here who's needing to accept her body. The quote I've gotten here is by Leanne, Two Spirits was the video she made. It's called "The Bravest Choice is to Be Yourself." So if we can all be ourselves, that is the most important thing. The bravest choice is to be yourself. And that's from Leanne. Anyway, I want to share this with you. It's called $1 Million Bucks. I'm going to read you a little excerpt plus the first 2 chapters. So a little note from me. If you are not comfortable with this topic, please don't read this book, okay? I think it's important enough that I don't want to get negative reviews from my usual readers who are uncomfortable with the topic of the story. So like, I don't want negative reviews for this. I'm not asking you to leave a review. I'm just asking you not to read it at all if this is an uncomfortable topic. But if you are comfortable, I will read a quick note. My friends, I have never felt more compelled to write a book in my life. If you had asked me a year ago if I would write a romance novel where one of the main characters was a homosexual man, I would have laughed. As a heterosexual woman, this is not a topic about which I consider myself to be an expert. One of my main characters is Ojibwe, and what Native American cultures would refer to as two spirits. Milton has a balanced interrelationship between his feminine and masculine identities. Most of my book has Milton dressed in women's clothing and sometimes uses the name Millie. So Milton uses the name Millie a little bit interchangeably. In the book, I usually refer to him as Milton just for continuity. He falls in love with a woman and a man. You'll just have to read the book to see how that all plays out. Please note that I consider this to be a clean romance. There's no swearing, vulgarity, or descriptions of sexual encounters. I don't ever want to imply that sex is dirty. I believe sex is a gift from God and meant to create a bond between consensual adults, usually 2 rather than 3, and preferably in a marital relationship. But we don't live in a perfect world, and a lot of things happen that we don't necessarily have either control of or agree with or whatever. Doesn't matter. This is the story, and this is what happened. So when I say this book needed to be written, I mean that I could not stop writing it from the time that I started writing it. It was in my head, and I couldn't stop writing until I got it into a Word document. I wrote $1 Million Bucks faster than I've ever written a book in my life. 800, usually my normal usual writing style is about 800 to 1200 words a day. And during the time that I was writing this, it was about 3,900 words a day, almost 4,000 words a day writing this, which is super fast for those of you who are authors or who know of authors. I could not stop writing. I was writing in my sleep. I was writing while I was watching football games. I was writing while I was playing board games with my family. And when I finally got to the computer, I was physically typing as fast as I could. Many times I found myself physically writing on the app on my phone. As soon as the story was out of my head, I went back to writing 800, 1,200 words a day. Back to the story. This is a clean romance about 3 people who fall in love with each other. Apparently that's called a polyamorous relationship. There's no swearing, description of body parts, and no play-by-play telling you what they're doing. What happens in their bedroom is none of our business. So I hope you love the story as much as I do. I'm going to read you the first 2 chapters so that you can kind of get a feel for the story. It's written in 3 point of views. We have Leanne's point of view, and we have Buck's point of view, and we have Milton's point of view. And you'll have to see how that plays out. Okay, so chapter 1 is called We Sound Like $1 Million. Okay, this is from Leanne's point of view. Thank you, everyone. You've been a great audience, Buck called into the microphone. See you tomorrow night. Leanne tucked herself in between Buck and Millie, wrapping her arms around both of their waists, and they bowed together. She loved the audience. She'd never received this strong of an ovation. She had never received this strong of an ovation when she was a solo comedian. But once she teamed up with the guys, her career had taken off. Their careers had taken off. The 3 of them together. Oh my gosh, I have got to get out of these hills. I keep messing up. Oh my gosh, I have got to get out of these heels, Millie grumbled through clenched teeth. My toes are killing me. Alec Pierce, the owner of the Comedy House nightclub, climbed the stairs to the stage and encouraged the crowd even more. Give it up for $1 million. The applause increased. He lowered his arms in a gesture for them to quiet their cheers. I have an exciting announcement. That was news to Leanne. She glanced up at Buck and found his deep blue eyes as confused as she felt. His playfully shaggy hair was sweaty and matted to his forehead, heated by the spotlights and the 45 minutes performing on stage. Buck glanced over Leanna's head at his boyfriend Milton, who was presently dressed in his preferred drag, complete with full makeup and his long hair and soft ringlets, playing the part of Millie, or as she is playing the part of Millie from her normal. I'm going to start this whole sentence over, okay? Playing the part of Millie, he, or she, as Milton identified this evening, shrugged. Millie, Leanne, and Buck have been selected to compete in the Twin Cities Comedy Festival in Minneapolis. Following Alec's announcement, there was more applause. Leanne's jaw dropped, and Buck squeezed her waist before offering Millie a fist bump. This was a big deal. So far, they'd only played at local clubs and headlined at the Comedy House, drawing in hundreds of patrons each night. Having the chance to compete regionally was a step closer to mainstream gigs and the wealth and prestige that accompanied such. Oh my gosh, this is so exciting, Millie gushed in her best Valley Girl imitation. Thank you, everyone. Thank you so much. Seriously, we're flattered, Buck said into his microphone. We'll make you proud, I promise. We know you will, son, Alex said with pride. We'll be cheering for you. Once again, show some love for $1 million. The 3 comedians bowed again and waved as they exited the stage. Buck always stepped down first and offered his hand to help Leanne and then Millie down the stairs. Millie stopped when she reached the floor, put her hand on Buck's arm to steady herself, and popped her foot to slip a finger through the strap of her heel. Pulling them off one at a time, she moaned with pleasure at having her toes out of the restrictive fake leather. Did you bring another pair of shoes? Buck asked softly. Yes, but I left them in the car. Millie whined and pouted her lower lip. I'll go get them for you, Buck said. Order me a beer when you get to the table. Thank you. Millie smiled at him and batted her eyelashes. You're my hero. Leanne sighed as she did every time Buck did something sweet for Millie and thought to herself, dang, I wish he wasn't gay. They'd been playing this act since they'd met, when they sat around a table waiting for their turns during an open mic night. They'd laughed together and bounced energy around the table and teased each other and decided that if the crowd could hear this, they'd give a standing ovation. When they'd finally reached across the table to shake hands and introduce themselves, their words had overlapped. Millie, Leanne, and Buck came out sounding like $1 million. They laughed again, then stopped laughing and suddenly jaws slacked. Did you hear what I just heard? Buck had asked. Yeah, Leanne nodded. That we sound like $1 million. We should totally go on stage together, Millie had said. And that was the night they became the comedy act known as $1,000,000. The following 6 weeks had been a flurry of gigs at every comedy club for miles around. Individually, they were funny enough to have their own act. Together, they were headliners. There were dozens of hilarious skits to be performed when a sultry brunette flirted shamelessly with a cross-dressing guy and his jealous hunk of a boyfriend. She loved these guys and loved that they included her in their boisterous relationship. The three of them had become inseparable. Now they were on the precipice of fame and fortune. Leanne helped Millie limp to their corner booth where they waited for Buck to bring Millie's shoes and the waitress to bring them a round of drinks on the house. Okay, now chapter 2. Hope you're liking it so far. Sorry about all my flubs, but hey, that's what live video is all about, right? Okay, so chapter 2 is called Morning Workout, and it's from Buck's perspective. Dude, are you almost ready? Buck stood by the door to their apartment, stretching his hamstrings, impatient to get started on their morning jog. Waiting for Milton to finish in the bathroom was like waiting for his older sister when they were teenagers. The bathroom door finally opened. Chill out. It takes time for me to look this good. Buck chuckled at Milton's joke. The makeup from last night had been washed off before he'd gone to bed, and his long hair was pulled up into a high ponytail, scraggly and uncombed. His athletic shorts and jersey shirt he wore for their morning workouts were as close as he came to dressing like a guy anymore. Milton had always been proud of his naturally long ebony hair that he pulled back into a low ponytail or braid similar to any other guy on his Ojibwe tribe. He'd fit in just fine during high school on the reservation, but upon arriving at the University of Minnesota, he would have looked normal with the hippies in the art department. The guys in the natural resources management department didn't exactly embrace him as a peer. When Buck had learned about the teasing that was going on, he'd stormed from their dorm room across campus and showed those country hicks who they'd have to mess with if the intimidation continued. That was the day Milton asked Buck to teach him some self-defense and to help bulk him up. He'd always been slim and slight of build, but there was no reason he couldn't have washboard abs and strong muscles everywhere else. They'd been inseparable ever since. Two unlikely and polar opposite guys who somehow got paired up as roommates in the freshman dorms were more like brothers than roommates. Buck had never felt threatened or uncomfortable about Milton's preferences. The kid had never hit on him or even flirted with him, and Buck wouldn't care if he did. He was secure enough in his own manhood not to let something like that faze him. He even went so far as pretending he was Milton's boyfriend whenever they met up at the comedy club after work and Milton was in full drag. Millie drew loads of attention from guys because she was drop-dead gorgeous dressed that way. She was a natural flirt, but there always came a time when the guys had a little too much to drink and got handsy. That's when Buck stepped in. Even if Buck had garnered the attention of his own little harem, he walked away without a second glance if his best friend was in trouble. His master's degree in mechanical engineering provided Buck with a lucrative career sitting in front of a computer, designing schematics, but little opportunity to meet women. Standing on stage at the comedy club, he was practically a celebrity. Girls used to flock to him and flaunt themselves at him. Not so much anymore. As far as everyone else at the club was concerned, Buck was off the market, and he was just fine with that. Other than Leanne, Milton was the only person he wanted to spend time with anyway. The makeup hadn't started until their junior year when Milton started wearing eyeliner, or guy-liner as he called it. Buck would occasionally find Milton pulling his ponytail higher as a girl would wear it and gazing at himself in the mirror. When he realized Buck had walked into the room, Milton would quickly pull the ponytail holder off and shake out his hair, then collect the long, thick strands into his traditional native style. Then his sister came to visit one weekend and freaked out about the condition of Milton's hair and his overly casual attire. She said things like, "Why are you wearing all the beautiful clothes we bought you to take to college? And your hair looks so dull. Did you run out of your juniper berry shampoo or something? I'm a poor college student. I can't afford all that stuff anymore. Milton gulped nervously and glanced in Buck's direction. Nonsense, his sister said. You have a tribal stipend and full scholarship thanks to the good old US of A. Come on, we're going shopping. Your boyfriend can come too. Buck is not my boyfriend, Milton insisted, casually blushing. We are roommates, nothing more. Whatever you say, little brother, she said with a chuckle snort. He can come along. Buck had followed like a smitten puppy because Milton's older sister was hot as steam and wore a miniskirt that left little to the imagination. He spent the afternoon watching his roommate being dressed up like a Barbie in the hands of his own personal fashion guru. Milton definitely had the body for the clothes his sister was picking out. By the time she was done with her brother, he looked almost as hot as she did. Next came the cosmetics counter at the department store, where the two of them played like little kids in a candy store, picking out just the right shade of foundation to match Milton's skin tone, eyeshadow to go with every new outfit, lipstick that enhanced his naturally full lips, and the most expensive shampoo Buck had ever seen. The perfume counter was where Buck drew the line. He didn't care what his roommate wore for clothing and skincare, but Buck would have to smell whatever Milton sprayed all over himself. Together, they picked out a unisex cologne they both liked and left the department store smelling like twins and loaded down with shopping bags. He and his sister spent the rest of the weekend plucking eyebrows and trimming split ends and practicing with Milton's new curling iron. Buck watched with fascination, not even feigning disinterest, and even got in on the fun by letting Milton's sister weave what she called product into Buck's hair and helping him create a sexy, messy look that readied him for the cover of a Gentleman's Quarterly magazine. By the time his sister had left Sunday afternoon, she was satisfied with her work of art, and Milton seemed more relaxed and comfortable than Buck had ever seen him. She kissed her brother's cheeks and scolded him. Don't let these idiots at your fancy university try to change you ever again. If they don't like you for who they are, then they're not worth your time. I know, Milton said with a sigh. I'll never let it happen again. Her face waxed stoic, and she placed her hand over Milton's heart. Your two spirits live within. Do not hide one and glorify the other. The bravest choice is to be yourself. Remember that. I will remember, Milton whispered. In that moment, Buck could almost picture him in full regalia with a headdress of feathers, passing a tobacco pipe around a sacred fire. A calming peace settled into their dorm room. Good. Now, one more hug, and I have to get back to the res. I'm dancing at the powwow this week. You'll do great, sis. Love you. Love you too. Then his sister called over her shoulder. Nice to see you, Buck. Take care of my little brother for me. I promise, Buck called back, waving goodbye. To this day, he'd never broken that promise. 3 years and 2 master's degree later, the only time Milton was dressed like a guy was when they went for their morning jog. Okay, I gotta read you chapter 3 too, because this is the third chapter. It's from Milton's perspective, okay? So get a little drink of Diet Coke first. Okay, so chapter 3, I'll fight you for her. Milton. Will you please be patient? Milton whined, admiring himself in the bathroom mirror at the swanky hotel they were staying at for the Twin Cities Comedy Festival. He so rarely went out in public without a shirt that he had to make sure there were no imperfections on his beautiful body. 6 years of sculpting in the hands of his personal trainer and best friend, Buck Thompson, he had muscles on top of muscles. Wearing a swimsuit wasn't as intimidating when sporting the body of Adonis. How often am I going to see the sorry, this is Buck. I should totally not use the use the correct voice. I'm not a voiceover artist, right? How often am I going to have the opportunity to see Leanne in a bikini? Buck called through the door. I don't know, Milton said, opening the bathroom door so he could face Buck as they were talking. Maybe you should finally dig up the courage to ask her out, and then you can see her without the bikini. And mess up the chemistry the three of us have built in the past few months? Buck snorted. The sexual tension electrifying the stage every time we ascend those stairs is part of what makes our act so alluring. I'm pretty sure if you slept with her, we'd still have that spark, Milton said, turning back to the mirror. Of course, what do I know? I've never been in that position. As Milton pulled his long silky hair into a simple braid down the back of his neck, he ruminated on his lack of experience. He'd never had sex before and was resigned to the fact that he might never have the chance. Being comfortable in his own skin didn't erase the vulnerability of letting down his walls enough to allow someone to get that physically close to him. He might remain a virgin forever. He turned to face his roommate again. If you slept with her, the whole time you were on stage, all you could think about was how quickly you could get off the stage and into some corner to hide from the world to release the pent-up tension you've been built up during the act. Good point. Buck grabbed the electronic key to their room and held open the door. Do you think there will be towels down in the pool area? I'm sure there will be, Milton said, although I am skipping the pool and heading straight for the hot tub. I'm heading straight for whichever vessel of water the hot brunette in the bikini happens to be in, Buck said. Now you're talking. Milton patted Buck on the shoulder as he stepped out the door. See, you might get some action tonight if you play your cards right. With a body like his, Buck shouldn't have any trouble snagging the girl of his dreams. He was even more ripped than Milton and twice the size. There was a reason why Milton loved having Buck for a roommate. He was more like a bodyguard. Well, there were a lot of reasons Milton loved having Buck for a roommate. They were best friends, closer than brothers. When Buck finally did get married, Milton would probably beg to come live with them and be a nanny to his and Leanne's beautiful babies. Milton knew he'd never have a baby of his own. Heading for the elevator, Milton reminded himself that he didn't need to be self-conscious about going out in public without full makeup, curled hair, and beautiful clothes. Part of being comfortable in his own skin was embracing his two spirits, his masculinity as much as his feminine side. Underneath all the drag, he was still a man. He confidently rode the elevator to the floor where the pool was located and strode into the humid pool area with self-assurance, thanking Buck for holding open the door like a gentleman. They both stopped short when they saw Leanne sitting at the edge of the hot tub, dangling her feet and laughing along with some other comedians also there for the competition. Leanne's bikini hugged her curves in all the right places, lifting and accentuating parts of her body Milton had never seen on a woman. Buck whistled low under his breath, and the sound that came from his throat was a cross between a moan and a whimper. My thoughts exactly, Milton agreed. His stomach fluttered and his breath increased. How had he never noticed this attraction before? He cared about Leanne as a person, but now he suddenly saw her as a woman, and she was incredible. I changed my mind. I'll fight you for her. With that, he strode to the stairs of the hot tub and slipped into the water, making a beeline for his new object of desire, a woman so far out of his league, he would need the luck of the Greek god of Fortuna to even stand a chance. Sure, I pronounced that wrong. To even stand a chance. That's the end of chapter 3. Did I leave it on a horrible cliff note for you? You're just gonna have to read the rest of the book. Again, let me encourage you to not read A Million Bucks if you are uncomfortable with the topic and the subject matter. These guys are fantastic. I love Milton / Millie. I love Buck. I love Leanne. They are great for each other. I think you'll find that the three of them are just a fantastic little, almost a couple, or do they call a throuple? I don't know. It doesn't matter. They're a wonderful little group. They're a comedy club, and this is definitely not a comedy for a book, though. It is a really special love story. And please, please don't give it negative reviews, okay, on Amazon or Goodreads or whatever. This book, because of the subject matter and the way that it handles being a two spirits Native American and being in a polyamorous relationship. This is a really special book that could possibly save someone's life because they would connect with this subject matter. I have had sensitivity readers who were in polyamorous relationships and who are Native American and just, you know, traditional heterosexual white woman who was one of my sensitivity readers also. So I think that it's a great story. I hope that you read it. It's available on Amazon, or on either paperback or Kindle version. If you send me an email, I can actually mail you a copy. If you send me a check, I can mail you a signed copy. So you can email me at julie@spencerpublishingllc.com. julie@spencerpublishingllc.com. Or you can find me on my author website at authorjuliespencer.com. Okay, see you in the next video. Have a great day, guys. Bye.